Ladies and gentlemen, a few crucial questions remain. A. Whether or not ICC is proper institution to truly investigate into crimes against the earth. Secondly, even if they go ahead and impose all those restrictions and impose the laws onto the people, will there be any proper action or will there be proper deterrence to begin with? And lastly, the worst case and the best case. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, is ICC the proper institution to be taking care of crimes against the earth? We say, ladies and gentlemen, when the last speaker of the House went ahead and asked us a few questions, that the circumstantial evidences that we get in terms of the crimes against humanity are far more significantly different in comparison to the circumstantial evidences of crimes against the earth. We say, ladies and gentlemen, in what ways? Because first of all, when there is a mass killing, when there we see a large number of people who are slaughtered, there are witnesses existing and whatnot. Similarly, ladies and gentlemen, when there is a crime against the earth committed, when there is an oil spill due to negligence of a particular company or due to the fact that they used the ill technologies, not the proper ones, and that caused an oil spill, the circumstantial evidences are actually far more long lasting and existing over time. There are similar sort of witnesses who go ahead and can testify. There are people who can go ahead and investigate, and through the process of investigation, whenever an oil spill takes place, there are decades of remnants of evidences which remain. The basic point is, ladies and gentlemen, the circumstantial evidences of crimes committed against humanity that are assessed through the process of investigation are no different when it comes to crimes committed against the earth. We believe, ladies and gentlemen, as we have already argued, as when crimes are committed against earth, it's the people who are directly infected, it's the people who are directly affected, and henceforth when that takes place, as people are the last stakeholder who are ultimately harmed, henceforth it is actually crime against humanity. And it's not that one or two families who are being harmed, it was a large scale people who are being harmed, and henceforth we go ahead and advocate that this is a crime against humanity in parallel. And also when it comes to the point that because there's a large number of people, not only one or two families but hundreds of families, millions of families who are being affected by crimes against the earth, we think, ladies and gentlemen, it's only justified that principally we say that yes, ICC is capable. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, beside the principal argument, as I was already saying, when it comes to the circumstantial evidences, when hundreds of families are affected, when because of one oil spill, all the people who are living at the coast are now affected, all those families who are not, who used to have livelihood previously are now affected by deforestation, and now hundreds of families are now unemployed, hundreds of families have their homes destroyed, just like when there will be indiscriminate bombing in a particular civilian area by a general. Similarly, when there's an indiscriminate act of deforestation carried out by a company, and at that point hundreds of families are homeless now when their homes are destroyed, we think those are similar. And the circumstantial evidences of those homes being destroyed due to deforestation, their occupations being lost, we think they have similar sort of circumstantial evidences available, and henceforth the investigations can clearly lead to similar sort of prosecution and similar sort of conviction can be carried out. Secondly, will the developed countries be harmed? Will the developing countries be convicted more often in comparison to developed countries? To begin with, ladies and gentlemen, let's understand this. ICC doesn't go ahead and prosecute government. It goes ahead and prosecutes individuals within the system, individuals within a particular scenario. So for example, ladies and gentlemen, when Neverin Karadzic went ahead and extradited, at that point, the Slovakian government wasn't charged with anything, even despite the fact that the Slovakian government was the successor government in response to maybe the fact that the genocide took place under the Slovakian government's watch. But this government is no how responsible. Who's responsible? Neverin Karadzic is responsible. Henceforth, what we understand is that when it comes to the fact that individuals are tried, not governments, henceforth what we understand is that it's not going to be as such that developing countries or developed countries are actually going to be affected more, but rather, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to be affected equally. So first idea is that when, for example, in Sundarban we saw the transnational Spanish company was the one who was responsible for the Sundarban oil spill, at that point what we will see is that the Spanish company would be charged. And that doesn't mean just because the Spanish government isn't rectifying, it doesn't mean that we will go ahead and we will not be able to try the transnational Spanish government. to transnational Spanish organization or the company. We can still go ahead and try. We can still go ahead and investigate. And if they're found guilty, we can still tell the world that they are responsible for this crime against the earth, and henceforth they should be boycotted or they should be demonized. And when they're demonized, this very basic demonization is going to be a massive deterrence. That slowly points down to the point that will this ever create true deterrence? We say yes, because first of all, ladies and gentlemen, two scenarios. One scenario is when countries, just because of there's a situation where crimes against the earth would be committed, they would have to not back their companies and their companies would be harmed, they would not rectify. In those situations, we still say, ladies and gentlemen, there will be countries who will go ahead and rectify. And we still think, ladies and gentlemen, when there are scenarios when there are certain countries who are still rectifying, we can still go ahead and reduce the harm in those companies and create a deterrence with the help of those governments and really prosecute them and put them behind bars. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, why we think that countries wouldn't be really going ahead like not rectifying? We think, ladies and gentlemen, still countries, developed countries even, would be rectifying this. Because, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, these are not governments being prosecuted. But hey, wait a second. We still see that USA and developed countries do not rectify ICC. They fear they would be put forward crimes against humanity in many of the cases as they commit many of the wars. So similarly, would US government be, in order to back their own companies, would they not be helping? But two responses to it. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, even despite the fact, even if United States government does not go ahead and rectify, we think, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that these companies would be trying to save their ass from international media scrutiny, because now there's an international media which tries to go ahead and tries to scrutinize all these companies because of the fact that an international company, an international organization is now involved in their prosecuting process. However, otherwise, a developing country's court would have prosecuted, which obviously many of the people would think that they're corrupt and whatnot. But the idea that exists is that right now, international recognition of the process of prosecution would be getting significantly important. More importantly, as they say that ICC is actually funded and helped by many of the developed countries, would they be going ahead and would they be charging against those companies from those particular developed countries? We provide you with three responses. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, the idea which comes into existence that when a particular deforestation takes place, when a particular crime against the earth takes place, at that point, it's not obvious the governments would always be shunning it away. But rather what happens is that even if the government shun away, there is a separate international body to go ahead and investigate and prosecute. That's the most important change that we're talking about. The entire idea is that just because we fear that government won't be cooperating doesn't mean that we shouldn't go ahead and have it. We believe, ladies and gentlemen, that when it comes to the point that when governments are not really reacting, it is the point where ICC goes ahead and truly reacts. It is the point where if, ladies and gentlemen, if the governments fail to go ahead and have proper impact, it's at that point when organizations such as Greenpeace, which they're saying that they're organizations who can separately have an impact, those are really small deterrences. And at this circumstance, what we see is that the deterrences that are tried to be created by these small organizations or organizations in as a whole are really very little, because they can't really make BP feel all guilty. They can't really, with their media campaigns and everything else, they can't really make that. But however, if these organizations go ahead and sue BP in ICC, at that point, BP would be looking at the fact that I am being prosecuted by an international organization, getting scrutinized by an international media. At that point only will this organization go ahead and will be able to have an impact by prosecuting the multinationals. We believe, ladies and gentlemen, both the sides agree that there needs to be done something. But the question is how. And it's the process through which an international organization goes ahead and prosecutes. Thank you.